All right, this meeting will now come to order, and I will read the EPSB mission statements. The Education Professional Standards Board, in full collaboration and cooperation with its education partners, promotes high levels of student achievement by establishing and enforcing rigorous professional standards for preparation, certification, and responsible and ethical behavior of all professional educators in Kentucky. Serving as board secretary is Sharon Chesser. Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Amanda Ellis.
Present.
Susan Reber.
Present.
Diane Berry.
Present.
James Cousins. Elijah Edwards.
Present.
CJ Fryer.
Present.
Kathy Gunn. Priscilla Keller.
Present.
Amy Lingo.
Present.
Jacqueline Mayfield.
Present.
Corinne Murphy.
Present.
Meredith Pittman.
Present.
Lisa Rosinski. Amber Snell.
Present.
Chair Mitchell.
Present.
We have quorum.
All right, thank you so much. Interim Commissioner Robin Kinney joins us as secretary to EPSB. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. It's nice to see all of you. I have so many things to share with you since the last time that we were together. So much has happened, of course. For many school districts, we finished another year of school. We've graduated our seniors, and I had the opportunity to participate in graduation ceremonies at the Kentucky School for the Deaf and Kentucky School for the Blind, where we graduated 5 graduates at each of those schools. Not a dry eye in the house, as I'm sure many of your graduates as they walked across the stage. Lots of celebration. As we now turn to summer, we've got a really busy summer lining up for us too. I hope that many of our teachers get some well-deserved rest and relaxation, but we know in the summer that many of our teachers are still going strong. And so we want to support them still going strong. So we have lots of things going on here at the Department of Education to help support them. Yesterday, I was joined in Bourbon County Schools as we announced lots of really exciting reading initiatives that are taking place across the Commonwealth. Appreciate that Dr. Robbie Fletcher, our incoming commissioner, joined us for that event, as well as Representative James Tipton and Senator Stephen West, who have really been instrumental in advocating for literacy initiatives across the Commonwealth, as well as funding to support those initiatives. So they were both there with us yesterday. We also had an EPSB board member that was there with us yesterday. Dr. Lingo joined us from the University of Louisville. But here's a few of the things that are happening in the literacy space this summer. First, we have something that we call Summer Boost, which focuses on literacy and mathematics, but also combines it with our summer feeding sites. So nutrition, reading, and numeracy all in the same space over the summer, where kids come, they get nutritious meals, and then they also are exposed to continuing literacy efforts, games, all kinds of things that keep them engaged. We have 29 sites across the Commonwealth this year. That's through an application process, and I think almost everybody that applied, if not all that applied, are participating in this. The other thing in that partnership, we are distributing free books. And so at each site, 1,000 free books that will be given away to students. Again, continuing to encourage, 20 minutes of reading a day really makes a difference over the summer months. We also have something on our website that's called our Read Aloud series. And on that, you can families can just click on it and they'll be exposed to authors and KDE staff, other people that we've encouraged to read a book on site. So that's happening as well. As I mentioned, we have our rollout of our new partnership with the University of Louisville. Really happy. This was through a competitive process, and U of L was the successful respondent for the Kentucky Center for Reading Research. Dr. Lingo, did I get that name right? We've been talking about what the name should be, and so I want to make sure that I get that right for the University of Louisville. Really happy of that new partnership that will again support literacy across the Commonwealth, and we're anxious to get started with the University of Louisville. We also have cohort 3 of the LETTERS program. I don't know if you all have heard about LETTERS, but it is the real thing. It is a professional development program. We've already had 4,000 teachers and administrators participate in LETTERS, and we are getting feedback, best professional development I've been in from both teachers and administrators. I really think it's going to be a game changer for us. And we have over 1,000 more already registered in cohort 3. And then finally, our Read to Succeed Summer Conference is on June 20th in Lexington. We already have 1,400 registered. We're shooting for about 2,000. We'd really like to have 2,000 there. And in both the LETTERS and the Read to Succeed Summer Conference, those are free, absolutely free to administrators and teachers that want to come. And so we really, if you know of teachers, administrators that may benefit from this, we really encourage them to attend and learn more about both those programs. The other thing that we're working on and will continue to work really hard on this summer is efforts surrounding the Kentucky United We Learn Council. We had an April convening, and remember, that's the group that really, we've taken all the information from stakeholders across Kentucky about what they want to see public education look like in the future. And we had an April convening, and we've kind of broken our groups down into more manageable bites, I would say. But the really exciting thing is we are now starting to really work on tangible prototypes. So what does assessment and accountability look like in the future as we try to continue to focus on vibrant learning experiences, innovation, doing things differently to make it meaningful and useful for all of our learners, and also engagement of our communities. So they are working this summer. We will be sharing prototypes which are in a very, very draft form to get input and feedback from all our stakeholders as we work toward actually implementation. And finally, this week is kind of bittersweet for me. This is the last month that I'll be serving as the interim commissioner. Very excited that we'll welcome Dr. Robbie Fletcher on July 1st. Dr. Fletcher has already been engaged. He had his school in Lawrence County. His school's in Lawrence County finish on the 17th of May. And he is really putting some miles on his vehicle because he's driving from Lawrence County to Frankfort many days or to other events that we are hosting. So I've talked with Chair Mitchell and with Cassie and Byron about as we transition, I want to welcome them to Dr. Fletcher and get Dr. Fletcher to get to know you and the importance of the work that your board does. But I will say I want to thank you for your service on the board. I know that this is a hard job, and you've got a lot of things on your agenda today, but I really do appreciate that our paths with many of you have crossed along the way, and I've enjoyed getting to know you. And I also want to thank the staff here at KDE that have really supported my efforts. I've asked a lot of questions, and they've been very patient and kind as I've tried to better understand your work. So certainly appreciate getting to know each of you a little bit better, and we'll look forward to supporting Dr. Fletcher as he comes on board. So that concludes my remarks. I'm happy to take any questions from any of you.
Any questions? All right.
Just thank you. Thank you for your guidance and your help through this transition.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Some days were a little challenging, but still a pleasure. We'll go ahead and allow others to give their reports. Our second report is from Susan Reber, and she'll give the report from the Education and Labor Cabinet.
Mine is relatively short. One is because I can't quite get my notes to pull up. But this is not necessarily EPSB related, but for anyone who was around during the pandemic, the Office of Unemployment Insurance finally signed a contract for a new system. So we're very excited about about that. Also, there's a program called Jobs for America or Jobs for Veterans State Grants, and they have been, it's on a small scale, but they've been placing veterans in some jobs, including bus drivers for schools. And so that's been successful, even though on a small scale, and it's great. It works out for everybody really well. On the other side of things, the cabinet is working with the legislature on appearing before several interim committee hearings, and so we'll be getting more updates as that goes along about what those look like. But that's the gist of everything I have, and I'm sure there's something in my notes that will pop up later on, and I may share later. Thank you very much, Rob.
Thank you, Susan. Next, we have a report from the Council on Post-Secondary Education. I'll turn it over to Amelia Ellis.
Thank you, and Robin, thank you definitely for serving. We appreciate you. So just a few updates to give you. What's high on our list in support of KIA is FAFSA completion. You all have heard and are dealing with, our campuses are dealing with the issues of students having such a hard time filing or getting the results of what they are eligible for. And so we are all hands on deck with KIA to support any of our students and their families of completing the FAFSA, helping them get across the finish line. And if you are or are not aware, is our state is incredibly supportive of student aid. They have committed, millions of dollars to aid, but a lot of that CAP and what else is the other one? Nope. For the private schools, I can't think of it. Anyway, there's additional state aid that I cannot think of, and I don't have that in my notes, is that the students have to know if they're Pell eligible to tap into the state aid as well. So that is a waterfall effect ultimately for the students' ability to know if they can attend school, can afford school, and if they can afford housing. So IKEA just pushed out over 70 sites where they will be available this summer all across the Commonwealth to help families and students complete the FAFSA or help them. And then our Gear Up team is also joining them to offer office hours and times for families. There are also a few sites for our Spanish speaking community to have interpreters there as well. And so I will share that out with Cassie to share with the group. But if you can get the word out, it really is important. We're about 17% behind where we were this time last year. We are at 19 out of all the states, but that's not great. We are not where we need to be, and ultimately it impacts our students and prospective students who are deciding whether or not they should continue their education. So that is our number one focus right now, and I'll send that information out to you. In that same vein, recently we had a CPE report come out that the undergraduate student debt levels in Kentucky have dropped. So we are seeing improvement for more students finishing school debt-free. That is a huge shout out to our campuses who bend over backwards to really seek out aid and opportunities for students to not have to carry a lot of debt. They have done incredible work, and I know just the two campuses here, U of L and WKU, are incredibly generous with their scholarships and their support. And so we're seeing the results of that. So we don't want that to drop because of the FAFSA piece. That's really important. The other thing just to keep in mind is we have been convening a community of practice around dual credit that includes higher ed and K-12. And it's been really, really quite exciting to hear the conversations because you don't know what you don't know. And so the two worlds have come together of what hasn't been working well, how we can improve quality and opportunities and access for students. And so they've been meeting over the past few months, and they're going to come together at the end of this week to share some of their solutions and have conversations with KIA, with us, with different folks who could possibly impact the change in the process or policies or whatever it would take to really remove barriers. For students, we see incredible outcomes with dual credit. Is it perfect? No, but we just had recent data come out that really shows students who have earned dual credit, college credit in high school, have a greater rate of not only matriculating but succeeding and completing. That prevails beyond any of the student population struggles, whether it be low income or first gen or URM, any of that. It really shows dual credit is a game changer. And we have data showing that. We have incredible support in the state for that to remove financial barrier. And so now we want to improve quality, improve our communication. And so that's gone really well. We are in partnership with the College and High School Alliance. They've been great partners with us in introducing us to other state concepts and other partners who are also trying to do this work. And so that's going very, very well. And then the last thing I was going to share with you is the Commonwealth Education Continuum has 4 working groups that are up and running. A couple of us here are on committees or reaching out for stakeholder feedback. So if I tap into you, know that we need your input. We're really focused on, they're very concerned still, obviously, about the teacher workforce issue, and that it's not a one size fits all. There's lots of things, including leadership capacity to not only recruit, but retain and provide a really strong working environment for our teachers and our staff. There's work around access and affordability. So we have folks talking about not only just FAFSA and scholarship, but how do you help with student basic needs on campus and the underutilized programs that we already have available. So we have great conversation around TRIO, Upward Bound, Gear Up. There's lots of things available that just students don't know. How do we improve that? And we're still talking about advising. And we have an advising framework coming out really that's geared for college and career readiness and discussing what happens the day after graduation with our high school counselors and advisors, because they have lots on their plate, including Friskies and the folks that help support our students. And then we have in working relationship, as Robin mentioned, with United We Learn around competency. So where the profile of a learner has been worked on a lot in our districts. We have a graduate profile in higher ed. And so we are working with CBIN, and there's lots of business and industry. K-12 is on ours, higher ed, and we're developing these competencies. And so the next step around that is to really combine forces with K-12 and see where the crosswalk is. What does that continuum, no pun intended, look like on building those competencies to help prepare for a strong workforce? So lots of work going on, and I think I'll just stop there. So Robin, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. And then finally, I'll ask our Associate Commissioner to give a report from the Office of Educator Licensure and Effectiveness.
Hey, good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you. And I want to say thank you, Interim Commissioner Kinney, for your engagement and your support. It is most appreciated, and I think that's reflected as well from the EPSB members here, but also from staff also. Mostly I want to take note of all the preparations leading up to this meeting, each of you for making time right as the school year has concluded. So sort of the freedom, and then, oh, I've got to get up early, I've got to go to a meeting. So that is duly noted. Members of OELE and OLS have quickly drafted several documents for your review and input throughout today's meeting. I'm sure you realize that upon seeing all of the materials within the board folders. So much appreciation for getting everything in order as always. And then I just want you to know I regularly comment about the professionalism and commitment of this board in combination with the abilities of those serving in OELE as well. As you've witnessed in the board materials, OLS and OELE have information concerning regulatory changes relating to educator cases and certificates. So looking forward to input regarding the regulatory changes that are necessary to meet the statutes and the changes. The scheduling of future meetings, of course, is going to be an important conversation for today. And then input and feedback on new teacher induction. And just thoughts on some initial drafted materials that are within your possession. So really looking forward to your thoughts from your positions regarding that. An important part of this process will be evaluating the necessary EPSB staff to support this work. So this does not come without other demands, and that will be, of course, likely demands on time and being able to make sure we can process everything accordingly and without undue stress on those that are already currently very busy in their regular schedules. On June 14th, the Accreditation Audit Committee will meet to review 5 institutions, so that will be coming up in the near future. Also on June 14th, the Division of Educator Recruitment and Development will celebrate the 23-24 Go Teach KY ambassadors with a luncheon. So just as a part of elevating the profession, just an opportunity to celebrate their year of being an ambassador. And I know it's a lot to ask for anyone to travel to Frankfurt, but looking forward to a day and being able to celebrate them giving voice in the field and representing their schools and their regions in the name of promoting our profession. And then on June 10th, KDE has been invited to sit on a panel during the Kentucky Association of School Superintendents Conference. Interim Commissioner Kinney and others have been asked to join the conference, but it is a panel regarding the legislative session and obviously the bills pertaining to education. So there will be just an opportunity to touch on some of the impacts that you're going to talk about today as we get into this meeting. But most importantly, I hope there is time for you to disconnect and enjoy yourselves. You deserve it. And there's just always demands on you that are beyond what is usually humanly available. So please, in the summer, take that time you need. And it's just always a joy and honor to interact with you all. So I appreciate you being here and getting this together on a relatively short timetable.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Byron?
Well, Byron, I don't know if you have numbers on you, but we have the Ed Rising National Conference in DC coming up. I know we have a number of Kentucky schools that will be there, so that's pretty exciting too.
We do. And so I'll find out if we can get a connection. It doesn't come directly through us, but I'll try to round about it and see how many we have that have officially signed up to attend. But there should be a strong contingency based on the interest level right after the March event. And so how many will you be taking?
At Beechwood, we're bringing 8. It's our first time going. And I was thankful to a partnership with NKU's College of Education that gave us a pretty nice financial gift to help send our kids.
Great.
Absolutely
Great.
exciting.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, I will follow up with updates, just thanking Robin for her service, that the transition has been, I think, as smooth as we could have even hoped for, that I have enjoyed the questions that you have asked, and really wanting to, for your short time as interim commissioner, really continue that work and want to help out in education in all areas. And so I'm so thankful for you as it relates to EPSB as well as the department as a whole. So thank you for your service, and I'm sure our paths will cross again.
I'm sure they will. Thank you so much. And that concludes our reports.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Chesser, has anyone signed up for open speak? No. All right. Well, the departure of Sarah Weedman has left a vacancy in the role of vice chair. The vice chair of EPSB is responsible for carrying out the duties of the chair in his or her absence and to assist the chair as necessary. Today, the board will need to elect a new vice chair. Is there a nomination for vice chair?
I'd make a motion to nominate Amber Snell as vice chair.
All right. Amber Snell has been nominated for vice chair. Are there any further nominations?
Does it need a second? I'll second.
I think,
Just the call for nomination, not a motion.
yes,
really.
we will have one.
I bet on that speak.
I will hold on that for a moment. Any others? All right, hearing none, the nominations are now closed. Is there a motion to approve the slate and elect Amber Snell as vice chair of the EPSB?
I'll make the motion.
All right, and is there a second?
I will second the motion.
All right. The motion before the board is for Amber Snell to serve as vice chair. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. So congratulations, Amber.
Hey, you did another job.
It's wonderful.
Another volunteer position.
And then I have one other update here under my report. And today is our last meeting for staff member Brianna Listerman. Brianna joined the team as staff attorney in 2019 before moving into the role as deputy general counsel and leading the board's educator casework. While we wish Brianna well, we will miss her. And I just wanted to take an opportunity to thank her and everything that she has done for us as a board, behind the scenes, things that I'm sure people don't even know everything that she has done. So thank you for everything. Yeah, and you will be missed. are moving along to consent items. Items A through K are listed on the agenda as consent items, and I will give members a moment to review the list. Does anyone wish to remove any of the items from the consent agenda for further discussion? Having received no request to remove the items from the consent agenda, can I have a motion to approve consent items A through K?
I make a motion to approve consent items A through K.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Reber. The motion before the board is to approve consent items A through K. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay, and the motion passes. Information items are presented to the board for information and discussion only, and we are starting with information item A. So, thank you.
Good morning, and Chair Mitchell, I know this is a topic very near and dear to your heart. Unfortunately, may not be in the lens that we had hoped for, but an opportunity to discuss some of the work that we've provided to you. So there are some materials that we included as potential samples of just to give you some ideas of what to look for and to consider as we move forward. And so we need your input on how we can best move this this project forward. But Senate Bill 265 does one. It removes all of the KTIP language in section 1. And this is shared on the Teams if you all want to share or if you want to pull it up on your computer. So, oh, Cassie said no, sorry.
Is it possible to turn one of those screens so that we can better see it this way? Is that possible?
I don't know that that can go much further.
I feel like it is. That's why I was asking. Yep.
Oh.
Thank you.
As I said, section 1 just completely removes all KTIP references. Section 2 and 3 specifically ask EPSB or assigns EPSB to design an induction and mentoring plan, and we'll get to an overview of what those requirements are, as well as section 2.8 requires EPSB and OELE to do an annual report and provide to LRC, and we'll discuss those. I will preface that conversation in saying that we have met internally to see what avenues we have to collect this information readily, but then it's going to require quite a bit of outreach to our districts. So as I mentioned, Section 1 removes KTIP references, and so basically the continued practice, since KTIP was not funded, in order to obtain certification, you have to complete an ed prep program or an alternative pathway. Assessments are still required, and employment is not required to get the certification. So getting into the meat of this, in 265, it specifically requires EPSB to develop standards and guidance for local districts to implement induction and mentoring, and also states that all school districts shall provide the induction for teachers in their first year. Standards are mentioned also in 3, and what I'm providing you is paraphrased. Ultimately, an orientation program that has to last the year. Assign a mentor within 2 weeks of teaching. Support team shall be created and developed for the mentee. Workshops and training professional development for the new teacher. Also workshops and training for the mentor. opportunities for the new teacher and the mentor to meet, network of teachers. So the support team is supposed to identify a network of support within the district and the school. And then also formative and summative evaluations. The impact also on EPSB and OELE around the standards is to also create evaluations and rubrics. And Cassie, we haven't really talked about this a great deal, but our evaluation system is defined in KRS 156557. And so that is what each district has local decision, but there are requirements in that statute that they have to follow in your certified evaluation plan and those processes. So what we've tried to do is to connect to that as much as possible and make it as seamless as possible, but also addressing in the guidance that in the samples that we provided, pointing those things out. But in these, in the rubrics and evaluations, there are some areas that must be covered: curriculum, content mastery, planning and assessment, teaching all students, and family engagement. And if you're using the framework for teaching, all of these are embedded within the framework of teaching, or framework for teaching. So the rubrics, they have to describe a practice of different levels of performance. Also have categories of evidence, multiple measures for student learning, also include observations and additional relevant evidence. And then the evaluation shall include a new teacher self-assessment, and we normally refer to that as self-reflection in previous years. Professional goal and growth plan, implementation of that plan, as well as formative assessment and summative assessment. So in section 2.8, this is where things really get interesting, and it requires us to, beginning this year, this October, we have to provide a report to the legislature. And the areas that we have to report on are the number of mentors, as well as their ed prep providers, the number of new teachers, so the new mentees, as well as their ed prep providers, analysis of their preparedness, so how prepared were they when they entered the profession, types of training utilized by the districts, the types of remediation and supports, major components that each induction program has, how programs are operated within the district, how long teachers receive support, the annual estimated cost per teacher, measures used for the program effectiveness, so internal growth, the impact of the teacher retention or on teacher retention, and then additionally, long-term analysis of the mentor program and how it impacts retention. So there is some challenging information that we will have to reach out to districts to get information on. And again, welcome all thoughts and ideas as we move forward. So that's a brief overview. So what we need today is a discussion on what you feel like this mentor and induction program needs to look like as far as a guidance. Again, these are standards and guidance that we're providing to districts. We know many districts are already implementing some of their version of what they call K-TIP, and it's fascinating how often they do refer to that TIP piece in their program. But again, it's local decision, but meeting these requirements. We plan to, once we meet today and have these discussions and then further discussions as well, and meet with stakeholders to get further input. So folks from CPE, our CACTI leaders, some of our K groups and so forth, we'll bring together and get some input as well, and then ultimately present back to you in a very near meeting. So like very quick turnaround on this one. So so at this time, that's an overview. I know it was very quick, and but try to paraphrase as much as we could, just so that it's easier to discuss. And then so we're open to ideas, comments, suggestions based on the information that we did provide to you. Again, those are samples, so we're not married to those in any form or fashion, but we wanted to provide you something to start the discussion. So I'll open it up.
Yes.
Just a quick comment, but I hope that a long-term implication. So with all the reporting related to EPPs and who the initial preparer was, there's not a lot in the guidance in the EPP involvement in the induction period. And I think that we have to make sure that the EPP is involved in that induction period. Not only is there reporting here, but there's reporting to our accrediting bodies on how these candidates do in those first year and 2 years, and student impact and those sorts of things. So I would want to encourage us to find ways in which we have detailed expectations of partnership in that induction period with the original EPP, or an alternative, right? Like, so say Amy prepares folks for work in Warren County, maybe they're working with Louisville, or maybe they're choosing to work with WKU because that's a primary provider. So some way in which we involve EPPs in the state.
I agree. And I would just say that, that was part of the beauty of the last KTIP model, where that teacher educator component, and that was also beneficial for higher ed faculty to be in classrooms, using observation instruments, et cetera. So I would just encourage conversation around those areas.
I will note, while we had some conversations with the bill sponsor around this, and around the fact that, that previous component of KTIP was so beneficial for our ed prep providers, but also for districts, of, showing how these individuals are once they get into the classroom, and helping to, inform the preparation of teachers as well. And while he did not add language that specifically mandated that component, he did state that there was nothing, and confirm there was nothing to prohibit that involvement. The concern, I think, that was shared from the district side was, looking to districts who are not close in proximity to a higher ed partner. And so, sometimes having scheduling conflicts to get somebody out there. But I think one of the things that we have learned during this pandemic is how to use Teams and Zoom and make things, easier, so that somebody doesn't have to drive 6 hours to be in a district. They can view that. So that may be something as well to discuss with stakeholders in development.
So it wasn't heavily mentioned, but in some of the guidance that we provided, tried to connect opportunities for ed prep, and as far as stakeholders and so forth. Another piece of that is getting feedback from CACTI. So one thing I did not mention is that there is no funding that comes with this. So because of that, that's a challenge, one, for districts, but then also we know ed prep. So then that conversation with the higher ed folks is going to be around how can you do this with no funding, basically. So
Not a conversation that's new to us.
Right.
Be frank.
Todd, what is the timeline? Like, I didn't hear you say when.
Yesterday.
That's what I figured. So do you have to have
So-
regs updated by?
So the language in the bill is specifically guidance from the EPSB, guidance and standards. there may be the potential to ultimately put that in a regulation, but for this first iteration, what we will be doing is guidance and
Guidance.
standards.
Okay.
So, thanks everybody for meeting today, and we will be trying to make you meet again prior to July 15th, because we have some other bills that are going into effect. Now, Senate Bill 265 did contain that emergency clause, and it is in effect, and they are expecting this program to be implemented in the fall with the first report to the interim joint committee in October. So
Okay.
that will be a probably pretty bare bones report that we will be able to give, but giving them at that point an update on what guidance, what work the board has done to get this up and running.
Okay, I didn't know if there was an emergency clause on it or not. So, okay. I would just say too, my 2 cents on it is that we need to see what we're already using. And you've already referred to that, because the framework aligns with this beautifully, which is why we had the framework back in the day, as you know, because it's a growth model, right? And so it encompasses the many roles of teachers. And even back when we first started with the Danielson framework, we did have CACTI come together and develop and update what we knew as KTIP to really align with that. And so I think it's going to be really important to look at what already exists and the crosswalk, so you're not starting new. And there's been a ton of work around that, and it's a really important piece of that. So we're not recreating something or duplicating the work. And I think the real key piece on this is stakeholder feedback, of talking to districts who are already doing this, doing it well, and have invested time and money and efforts into them having different models, so you're not having to come up with something overall. And we are more than happy to help partner in any way, because this is really important, but it's a huge lift in a short amount of time. So my hope is that we tap into the resources we already have and kind of narrow down what we don't have instead of starting all over, because it's huge.
Would someone have data that indicates which districts are doing it well, so that we would know which districts to talk to or partner with? I think that would be where to start, rather than just selecting a random district somewhere. So
Unfortunately, because it's been a local decision on implementing in general, but then, how they implement is, that creates a challenge. I'm not aware of any mechanism to capture that information easily without other than reaching.
AASS. Yeah, I'd have to tap into your partners.
Yeah.
I think we have anecdotal, not actual
Yeah.
data on
Right.
it,
Not
but we will
data
have
you will
people that
collect,
have highlighted their programs and organizations that have highlighted those.
And there are a lot of EPPs that have faculty that actually do research and study this and examine this. So I would encourage CACTI, or to ask CACTI those questions as well, because we've got a lot of expertise already in the state around mentoring and retention.
Other thoughts?
They really want this in place by August.
Yes. So, and I look at this as a living document, so to speak, of guidance, because ultimately we're providing guidance on best practice. And so as we identify new best practices, then we can update those. And I think that's potentially the beauty of not having it tied to a reg, so to speak, that we don't have to adhere to those policies, that we can update very easily.
I've got one small thing. I've got a lot of things, but one small thing that I'd like to just address, and it's really just my background working with gifted education. And I know that in looking at the developing lesson plans, like one says describe the students for which the lesson is designed. And I know that you're pulling language straight from the 1B category, but I do believe in the old KTIP version, it was explicit when it said advanced learners, gifted and talented students. And if that language could just be in there, because we do see language, and I I stand behind all of the list, but it says identify students' backgrounds, special needs, cultural differences, interest, and language proficiencies that were considered in designing this lesson. And I know that gifted and talented can fall into the category of special needs, but we don't really use that as much in Kentucky's language as other states do. So if we could just add just a little snippet for advanced learners or gifted and talented students as a thought when planning those, so that that group of students isn't left out.
Indeed. So other thoughts? You said you had a bunch.
Well, my thoughts are really behind still a need for funding for this, and that's not obviously coming from us, but I do hope that as we continue to build on this and see the needs, that maybe this could be re-evaluated by the General Assembly as we continue to have conversations about the connection, being really more intentional about connecting it to our EPPs and as well as funding in a couple of years for this, because I think it's great. I think that we now have something that's going to provide that mentoring, but there's still some gaps that are missing, and so I hope that this is a ongoing conversation.
Todd, one thing that caught my eye in the presentation was the verbiage around training for both the mentee and the mentor. So I was just curious, districts that are doing this well, that we're going to be finding out, is that in-house staff? Do we have local co-ops that are like doing like any kind of like mentor training already that we can partner with? Is that something that college, like, you know what I mean? I'm curious what.
So the answer is yes.
Okay, great.
But it varies. So I have had some preliminary conversations with some co-op leaders just around the topic. I don't know that many are doing much with it right now, but are open to it. Again, funding is an issue, but if their constituents are in need of this, then that's what they want to do. So that's obviously one of the stakeholder groups that we need to involve in the conversation.
So last year, 2 years ago, there was a small bucket of funding that came out of KDE that universities could apply to in partnership with districts to offer induction programming. And it allowed us to continue the good practices of K-Tech in that really supported way. And that also made sure that there was mentoring involved and training of those mentors. Last year, that money was redirected to the co-ops who don't have the structures necessarily, not all of them, but most of them do not have this as a structure in place. And so they ended up contracting with the universities back to then continue this work. And so with or without funding, the structures, to Amanda's point and to Amy's point, they exist. And I think CACD being a part of that conversation will be really important. But, a lot of this is district funding, and if the funding that was there last year and the year before wasn't enough, districts were using ESSER dollars to supplement to make sure that they could continue to do that. But of course, now those are going away too. So I know you advocated strongly for funding, but
I really did, guys. I feel like that's all I talked about from January to April. So, but I will say, just when we're looking at districts, I'm not saying that they could be great, but I know we're probably looking at the districts who are our university districts, right? Warren, Jefferson, Fayette. But if we can look at models, if we can find models that are doing really well in our rural, far away from our major university centers, if there's something out there that we can find that's working, because I think that's the whole problem with not funding it to begin with, is that our more affluent counties have more resources to do this, where our more rural districts who don't have these resources, at least nearby, they might be doing something, but how does that look? And so I'm just curious to see, when we gather that data, is there any any way that we can see, like, here's larger districts are doing this. What about our smaller districts?
There
that farther
are
away?
examples of smaller districts actually grouping together to partner with the university. So maybe they only have one new teacher or two new teachers, and they are, good 2 hours from a university center. I mean, this work happens in the districts. It shouldn't be the case that you are having to make people come to a campus. So, I think you'll find some good info there.
Would the co-ops have any information or specific co-ops?
No, the universities.
No, okay. Just
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah, that's
They were
that.
all involved.
Last year, they were given the money and then they contracted with the universities to make sure that this happened.
Okay.
So that's swing and a miss kind of situation, so.
And I know that funding is multifaceted, but I do think it's really important that we stress, as far as best practice, compensation of some sort for the mentor teachers, whether that is a stipend, which our Boyle School District does a stipend, which is nice, or, PD time, just some sort of compensation for that.
And Justin, to your point, I think it's going to be an interesting data point to see the implementation that districts have been doing versus what happens now that those ESSER funds are starting to dwindle, and what practices look like beyond that. So if they have the capability to invest in those mentor teachers in another fund through another funding source, then how are they doing that? But then I think ultimately, there's federal funds that could be used for this, and just repurposing and rethinking through those things too, if it's doable in a district. And I think that's the challenge, is the variance from district to district.
Any other questions or comments? And I'm sure that if you have some later on, please email those to Todd or Cassie or
Email Sharon. I don't.
Sharon could be, would be great.
No, you can email. You
But we
can
do
email
need
both
those,
of us actually.
those in pretty quick. So if you go home or on your ride home and you're thinking about something in the next few days, it'd be great to get that to them.
Yes, all ideas and suggestions are welcome, and we will work diligently to meet with stakeholders, but then also provide, while it may not be what we consider or what I consider top notch, at least doing something that's quality and guidance for districts, and then we can build upon that.
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. And next we have information item B, and I believe Brianna is going to present that.
All right. First, thank you all for your nice speech. I'm definitely going to miss everyone and have enjoyed serving the board. So we have a lot to discuss. So we'll start with information item B. The General Assembly gave us a lot to think about this session, and the procedures have a lot of amendments to accommodate the language in House Bill 300. I'll give a general overview, and then I'm happy to answer any questions and would really appreciate feedback. So we removed language that's already been stated in the statutes and administrative regulations. We provided further clarity on the new requirements of House Bill 300, including new notices process. Everything is going to be electronic through the KEX portal. So educators will receive all of their notifications through that, and it will also send an email to the email address listed on their KEX site. We are working with the vendor currently to send or to populate notices, make sure your email addresses are up to date. This is your responsibility. Superintendents also have access. We're working on an education program to train superintendents at the superintendent's webcasts to kind of give them a step-by-step of the new process. We have clarified electronic service as well as rebuttal extensions. There'll be multiple complaint reviews under this new statute. And so we're calling it the initial review, which has to be conducted within 30 calendar days, and then a follow-up review that must be conducted within 10 calendar days. So we're currently working on retaining more staff to assist with that process. Obviously, that's going to be difficult. And in the tradition, we also did not get funding. So we have the registers out currently for a staff 2 as well as an administrative assistant 3 to assist. We're hoping to have the staff 2 interviewed and hired by the end of June, as well as the administrative assistant. Our KEX system was recently generated. Unfortunately, it is not going to be able to accommodate all of the new requirements, and so we are working with the vendor to rebuild it. It is also going to be a significant cost. We are going to revamp the closed session docket review. Under the language of the statute, nothing will be redacted. So you all will receive full rebuttals, and sometimes those are up to 50 pages. We are going to let people know that we have a limited time and a limited attention span to hopefully get a really direct rebuttal. But it is what it is. The docket will, the positive is you no longer have the massive binder. You'll have a list of names that you click and walk through the KEX files. So you'll have access to the entire file. With that said, educator names will now be published in the minutes at the following meeting. We also are conducting pre-resolution conference procedures now. So what that means is prior to the board ever seeing the complaint, staff will extend an offer to resolve the case. I think that we're going to have to flesh that out. That means no investigation has taken place. It is an offer based on what we have received and what we can review at that time. We also have to amend the administrative charges process a little. We will file a recommendation for a sanction. So in closed session, when we discuss sanctions, that will not be the process going forward. It will be board action. So you can still admonish, you can still do a defer for training. It's called a conditional dismissal. We no longer have attorney review where we would say, I think this warrants a revocation, because at that time we would have to file charges immediately without an investigation based on the language of the statute. So what the recommendation is further investigation. You'll allow the attorneys and the investigators to dig in and then present you all with a recommendation for sanction. And that could also include a dismissal, but that way we aren't making decisions hastily without an investigation. It gives the investigators time to process, as well as the attorneys the time to ensure that we are thoroughly investigating and ensuring a just result in each of the cases. We also have changed the character and fitness process a little bit. Most of it has remained the same. We just wanted to make it a little more efficient. The appeals process is also different. So an admonishment appeal will need to be conducted within 30 calendar days of the receipt of the admonishment. The Attorney General's office has indicated that they believe that they can accommodate those cases. And so we are going to see how that process plays out. And then character and fitness processes will be different. The onus will now be on the educator. So currently, your staff drafts charges on denials and presents it to the AG's office, and then the educator has the burden going forward. After this, staff will no longer draft charges. The educator will appeal directly to the Attorney General's office, and the onus will be on the Attorney General's office and the educator to deal with the timelines with that. They understand and seem to believe that they can accommodate it. And then the recommended order and final order appeals are in the county that the educator resides is where they will be appealed. They will no longer be appealable to the Franklin Circuit Court. So we have hired contract counsel because our current staff can't handle the caseload that we have. We certainly can't travel across the state. So that is an additional cost unfortunately, but they are, the RFP is out there right now to get contract counsel, and we're hoping to get someone centrally located, so maybe to save on mileage. And that's where we are on that. The EPSB's probationary process essentially stays the same. Motions to reconsider, we just cleaned up the language to accommodate the current process, and the drug testing has been efficient. The only thing that changes with that is the notices come through the KEX portal rather than through certified mail, which actually is a positive thing to come out of this, because in the past we have 10 days from when they receive the green card. You're drug testing someone sick 45 days after they've received notice. It's not really effective to ensure compliance. Now they'll have 48 hours from the upload, and it's an actual 48 hours. So I think that will certainly assist in some of the substance abuse cases we've seen and ensuring everyone's getting the assistance that they need. So I know that that's a lot of information, and there's still 2 more to get through. So I will take any discussion, questions, feedback. Staff has worked really hard to try to figure out how to best accommodate the board and ensure that our cases are thoroughly investigated and handled appropriately.
Well, I am glad there's at least one perk that came from House Bill 300, and I think that is a benefit, and I'm great to see that. I'm concerned. I'm just going to say it as clear so it can be on record that this is not. I have a lot of things that just worry me about House Bill 300, and I will just say I know that as a board that we are diligent to provide unbiased opinions and thoughts in our closed session and conversation. I think one thing that just is beneficial is we don't see names, we don't see districts, we don't see any background. I mean, we only see the person's name when agreed orders are at the very end of that process. And I think that provides us an opportunity to look at that through a sort of a clean lens. And so I'm sure that our board will continue to be as unbiased as possible. But when you put the district name, when you put the person's name out there, it's really hard that you don't already have some kind of maybe preconceived notion about that. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the timelines. I am hopeful that maybe once this is really in the process and we've got these down, that maybe the General Assembly can come back to this to reevaluate. Because I'm just fearful that through the time restraints that things still could slip through. And the whole point is that we are providing educators, or we're providing a state to say, hey, these are trained professionals that we hold to a high standard. And I'm fearful there are some bad actors out there. And I'm fearful that this could allow those bad actors, just from whatever reason that we just went through, to slip through the crack. And I know that is not the General Assembly's goal. I just think it's an unintended consequence. And so hopefully as we start to dive in, we can see more of those unintended consequences and maybe shore that up in this next General Assembly. But I do thank you for your work and the staff's work on this, because to change this radically it's taken a lot of time and will continue to take a lot of time.
I'm going to echo that concern of not just us seeing the names, but them also now being printed in the minutes. So even, as there may be bias from us, now that becomes public knowledge, yes, there are some bad actors that definitely need to be out, but there's also people who have been maybe wrongly accused every so often or dismissed, that now there's, kind of a taint against that. So I hope we continue to evaluate this the next legislative session.
It'll be interesting to know if the Attorney General's office can keep up with stuff too, with certain cases. Just my thought.
Yes, great.
Just a question, Brianna, I don't have any expectation that you have the answer to this because you've been dealing with the outcomes. But how does this new process and timeline, and maybe this is something for us to investigate, how does this compare to other states' expectations of the management of ethics cases and their responses? And are we 7 steps too far where other states have been able to reasonably manage this? And I'm not opposed to reasonable management, but this feels like 7 steps past what we can do reasonably.
Yes. So
There it is.
I'm gonna let Cassie have this one.
One of my favorite.
we, in trying to provide the General Assembly with information while this bill was pending and all of our many written communications, be sitting at a table, we did research. We reached out to through the Southern region and NASDAQ. I sent an email out to all of our other states to see, hey, what timelines do you have in place? Everybody was like, wow, that's terrible. That we are going to be the location for NASDAQ's PPI in the fall, and that is the conference that brings together the attorneys and investigators that do this work all across the nation. And so we will, continue to get feedback from them about that. We continue to have those conversations. There were a few other states that had timelines. I would not say that they were comparable to this. Georgia had timelines in place for their complaint review, but they had the ability to extend their timelines. South Carolina sent me theirs, and theirs, I believe, were after once action was being taken, but they told me that they didn't have the staff or the ability to comply with those timelines, so they simply didn't. Theirs did not have that repercussion, whereas ours say if the board does not review a case within 30 days at a certain point in the procedures, that case will be dismissed. So we had, I think, a lot of fear from some other states that this is something that's going to get out there, but just nothing comparable. Arkansas had, I believe, 150 days to investigate and take action, but they also have a large staff of investigators, and the things for which they can take action greatly differ from what this board can. So we have some of that out there. I can send you the last statement that I had, but I do think we will continue to get some information and feedback, especially as we're preparing for this PPI in Lexington. And that PPI stands for the Professional Practices Institute, in case anybody has a quiz later.
Thank you, Cassie.
Quick.
Yes, of course.
First, I just want to, on the record, echo Chair Mitchell and Vice Chair, that sounds nice, Snell's comments, right? Because this was championed as a teacher rights bill and feels like anything but. I do have 2 questions, and Brianna, I do want to thank you and your team again, because I know just to do all this in this time frame, so thank you. But 2 things that you mentioned in your little spiel, but I think I missed a detail. One, the part where when an initial complaint comes in, and you guys have the ability to, with just that information you have, can you explain that a little bit again, as far as do we get any of that information later, or? Okay.
Yes. So when the complaint comes in, the complaint committee reviews it the first time. If there is sufficient evidence, we will notify the educator. Either way, insufficient or sufficient, we will notify the educator that a complaint was received, that it was reviewed. If it is sufficient, that means sufficient credible evidence that a violation has occurred, they have the opportunity to file a rebuttal. And then we will conduct a pre-resolution conference. So a staff attorney will extend an offer. If the offer is accepted, it will be presented to the board in the format of an agreed order.
Okay. And the offer would just be based off precedent of other stuff,
Yes.
right? Okay.
And then if it's not accepted, it will come before you as an educator
Makes
case.
sense. Okay.
Everybody receives their complaints now. That was something else I had failed to mention. So even if a complaint is found insufficient and closed, it will be sent to the educator. So they will know currently when it's closed, it just dies here and we don't send it out. The educator will receive a copy of dismissed complaints, and the complainant will as well.
Okay. And then my other question was those ones that we feel like we definitely need more time. You kind of touched on that, but how does that then jive with still being in compliant with?
It's a further investigation.
Okay.
So we don't determine sanctions until the end. So when we present it currently, you're in the format of thinking what you want from your attorneys.
Mhm.
Now we need to know what everything is before we can even consider what you want from the attorneys. So it's considered further investigation.
And that title gives it a
Yes.
within House Bill
Yes,
300.
and then
okay.
when you want sanctions, it will either come through an agreed order fashion, or when we bring back the recommendation for sanction, which is the same as the statement of the charges now, that's how you would review it. So you would still be able to have the same result. It's just a little bit of a lengthier process to get there.
Thank you.
And I know that an action item later is our meeting schedule. So is it within 30 days?
Well, and I don't want to steal Cassie's thunder because she put a lot of thought in this. You will see staff about every 3 weeks, every 2 weeks. Yeah, unfortunately. The way it works is it has to be reviewed within 30 days. And math teachers can help me here. So we have 30 days to review, and then 10 days again, and then 7 days to notify. 30 days after those 7 days is when you all have to review it. And so to ensure that that happens, it's about every 21 days that you'll see staff. I know that Cassie has done her best to accommodate with a virtual meeting, but that's the only way to ensure that cases aren't getting dismissed for lack of review.
We will have to meet every 21 days?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean,
We're not teaching students.
there's concerns for our classrooms as well.
And I know you all can pull this up and watch. Cassie did an excellent job of letting anyone who would listen know the concerns that we had. And unfortunately, the teacher shortage didn't come into a discussion, I guess.
And I'll be clear on the record that we love serving on this board and we
Sure.
love being involved in this work, but we have a commitment to our students in our classrooms, and
Then
that's
what the
alarming.
sport is for.
Yeah. It's
So
alarming.
we appreciate the commitment to students. Okay. Anything else that concerns, I mean, I know there are concerns, but anything that people want to put on the record before I move to the next?
Bring it on.
That I know that we have to report out to the interim committee on EPSB, but it's also like, I think a KDE, isn't there a list of things in another?
So I think you're talking about the audit that.
Yes, I'm
is-
sorry.
okay, So that was House Bill 825, I believe, did an audit of the department.
Yes, that's it.
And one of the things in there does talk about staff and support to the Education Professional Standards Board. There's multiple items listed in there, but that one is specific to this board. So that is one of the things that will be looked at in this audit. And hopefully auditors can also see and appreciate some of the concerns with this. We will not have any control over the audit. I mean, it is going to be us providing information, the department providing information and assisting, answering questions to auditors. But we are hopeful that that is something that they can report back on to the
That was
General
my hope,
Assembly.
that during the audit, when it comes to EPSB, that this would be a glaring concern that we have. And as a volunteer board, we want to make sure that we're doing our due justice there, but we also have to be realistic. And I'm hopeful that that can be addressed there, and it can be addressed to anyone that is listening right now, that they would want to say, hey, I want to champion that this next General Assembly to make that reasonable.
Volunteer board of active educators and administrators that will now be out of the building, almost double or more what we were previously.
And while that's the top issue on this specific item, I'll also add that KD, covers sub expenses for the active teachers on the board. So that's an increased cost that did not have any funding attached to it either.
So I think the approach from this board and from staff is going to be to carry this out with fidelity, to do the best that we can within these constraints. However, we also will be sharing those concerns continuously, and as things pop up, as we are implementing this, some real world examples of problems that happen, because sometimes when, we are sharing or staff is sharing what we see as potential issues, if there's not a real concrete example to that, then that doesn't hit the same way. So we will, again, do our best and continue with this, but also share those concerns. And, we have some legislators that have some real concerns that they've expressed around grooming, around educator misconduct. And so making sure that they are also aware of any implications that this may have on those going forward.
And I know that we have a Kentucky Board of Education meeting later this week, and I know that they're aware of the bill, but I hope that maybe just continue to express maybe concerns that EPSB is having with this bill as we move forward. I would appreciate that too. All right. I think we're good. I think we can move on.
Well, not exactly. We're headed into the regulation that does the exact same thing. So we changed to accommodate the procedures and the regulation. We molded the procedures around it. So you'll see a lot of the similar language. You still have the ability to revoke, suspend, deny. We still reissue and renew. But we made changes to the existing language to comply. We made formatting changes as well as sections just to make it clearer. Got a really nice training yesterday that's going to help staff further make these what the General Assembly wants to see. We learned a lot of new stuff yesterday. So essentially, they are just the exact same language. We are required to drug test. We're going to continue to do that. Any questions as far as procedures?
The regulation is on page 136 in your agenda book. With this, for today, this is just information item. As Brianna noted, there's some additional kind of formatting changes that we will have to make to that. Also, we will be bringing this back to you for final approval. With that, again, we're hoping to get another meeting prior to July 15th. That may be a virtual one, but we will work to schedule that. Because of the statute and statutory changes going into effect on July 15th, this will also be filed as an emergency. So we don't have the statement of emergency with it at this time, but when we bring it back to you for action, we will include that as well.
And one concern I have been unable to resolve with staff, so we would appreciate feedback on. So with our current timelines, we've been calling it 30, 10, 7, 30, just to keep up with all of the numbers. So when we receive initial complaints, that triggers the 30 days. What happens when an amended complaint comes in? If we merge it in, there's no direction on what to do. And so currently, staff has tried to accommodate as best we can. And the answer we have come to is when new information comes in, it will be a new complaint.
Yes.
And the agreed order will address all complaint numbers at the top as a merged resolution. If it gets to the hearing process, all complaints will be filed under the resolution or the recommendation for a sanction, and the Attorney General's office recommended order will have an inclusive case number of all of the complaints.
Yes.
Okay, because we've been struggling, just even with the transition of prior complaints on July 15th, we don't just get rid of all of the old cases. We're trying to figure out how to best accommodate new timelines and old timelines without letting anything slip through the crack. So with all the other transition you guys are going through. All right, that's the only thing that I had on the regulation. If no other comments, I will move to the Code of Ethics, which also had a lot of amendments. Okay, so 16 KAR 1020, it is your current professional code of ethics. We have changed the existing language to comply with House Bill 300, as well as formatting and order of sections for clarity. A definition section has been added. We had, as Cassie noted, we've been to several NASDAQ conferences, and grooming and sexual contact, sexual misconduct has been a significant portion of our training. And we we're at our last conference, we were given a definition from another state, and it's something that I think would really help our board put a definition on what we've been seeing. And so that definition is in here. We've defined an educator. It's a person credentialed by the EPSB affiliated with a public or private local education agency in an official capacity. Student, I know there had been some discussions on the definition. It is currently defined by K through 12. So we have left that definition, but have noted under sexual contact that this provision will extend 24 months post-graduation. So that would mean any sexual contact, including grooming, anything of that sort would fall 24 months after the last date that child was enrolled in an LEA. We have included some other changes. So previously it said protecting students' constitutional rights. We've added just some more details. Shall now, on the basis of race, color, creed, sex, national origin, marital status, political or religious beliefs, family, social, cultural background, or sexual orientation, unfairly exclude any student from participation in any program, deny benefits to any student, or grant any advantage to any student, to give it a more detailed definition rather than just constitutional protections. We had to renumber most of that section and took out the categories. So previously it was to the profession, to the student, to the parents. And we have run into issues where it's a cross violation, but we couldn't prove it based on the subcategory. So now the Code of Ethics applies to anyone that an educator, certified educator, comes into contact with. We need to show everyone respect. We need to respect all their constitutional rights, ensure their health, safety, and welfare. We included the communication portion. That's been a significant number of our cases, that educators shall interact with students in a transparent manner and in an appropriate setting, shall communicate using only school endorsed methods of communications, and shall not communicate with students using methods of communications not endorsed by the LEA, including end-to-end encrypted social media or messaging platform. It's strictly prohibited. So that's our Snapchats, our Kicks. I'm sure there's something I'm forgetting that's new, but it's a general definition to say anything that they could create, we're not using.
And not to interrupt you, I read that line a couple times at home. I want to make sure if we had a school with a not wise admin team that was like, oh yeah, meet the kids where they are, use Snapchat. The way we've worded that part still would say that that's not okay.
Correct.
Right? Good.
Yes.
I thought it did, but I just want to be legally clear that.
So the end-to-end encrypted apps is completely prohibited. And
even if an admin said.
Yes, and then the rest of it is any LEA endorsed communication.
Perfect. Didn't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry.
Absolutely, and any questions, feel free, because there is a lot here and I don't want you to lose track of your questions. So we included one that noted to shall promote appropriate and effective relationships with colleagues by respecting them as a fellow professional, maintaining civility when differences arise and resolving conflicts. And then correspondence with the EPSB. That's something that has really slowed down our process. We don't receive responses from educators. We don't receive responses from opposing counsel. And with the current timelines, we simply cannot wait around. So that has been included in districts. I want to make sure that it applies to everyone. If the EPSB sends correspondence, we need a response. And then at the end, that it just results in a hearing if the board decides that a sanction is something that is warranted.
Could I make a quick comment,
Of
Chair
course.
Mitchell? I just want to say, I know it's an information item today and we're not taking action yet, but I just want to say of everything we're doing today, I think this is single-handedly one of the most important things that we're starting the process on. I know this started with our November special called meeting, so I want to thank the board for this, and I want to thank Brianna and your entire team for putting this into language. When's the last time the Code of Ethics has been updated?
A while.
Yeah, that's I feel like we talked about this, and that was my point. I think, it's 2024 and we've seen unfortunately a number of, whenever a rule, like the 2-year rule, like, like you think like who would even, right? But okay, right? So these are things we need. It's sad that you have to need these things, but we need them. And I think this is the number one thing we're doing right now to elevate the profession and make sure we're really protecting the integrity of what we do and protecting our kids and our families. So thank you for all the work with this. I'm really excited about this moving forward, and just appreciation to everyone.
So to more specifically answer your
Yes, thank
question, the regulation was first promulgated in 1995. And then when EPSB moved from being under the Department of Education and became an independent agency, that regulation was recodified into Title 16, but there have not been subsequent
Case in
changes.
point. There you go.
So it's time.
And down the road, when this gets like full approval and everything, I know those little green bookmarks have always been so nice. So we'll need to get some nice updated,
Yeah, with the.
We'll have to be careful on
maybe
some
we'll
of the
get
wording of
funding
this,
for
but
that
yeah,
before
right.
we start spending more money on
But
paper things.
I'm really, this is way overdue and I'm excited we're doing it.
And funny enough, Lee and I were just talking about that. I have thousands under my desk that now
Of
have to go
those-
in the garbage.
yeah.
Because they're useless, yeah.
No, I think it's great work. And so I'm
Really good work.
I think
Thank you.
we will benefit as a profession from this. Anything else from the board? All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Next up, we have Cassie, who's going to talk about Education Professional Standards Board meeting schedule.
Oh, she was holding these ones.
Oh my goodness.
So as Brianna mentioned, this was a challenge, and I think it still will be a challenge. Our initial thought was going to be, because what your current meeting schedule is that you meet on the second or third Monday of even numbered months. And so originally we were going into this thinking, okay, well, we'll just add another meeting in the off months and that will cover it. But as we put that on a calendar, realizing that even with that time frame, there would be times that there was more than 30 days between meetings. Also, there's going to have to be some period prior to the meeting where staff shuts down the number of cases that are on the meeting so that they can be prepared. Even though, as Brianna mentioned, the docket's not going to be the same, it'll be clicking through. There's still going to be some preparation that will have to happen with that. So what I have printed out for you is looking at potential meeting dates for the 24-25 school year. And under this, what the proposal would be is moving all of your regularly scheduled meetings, so those that are in yellow, would be on the third Monday of the even numbered months. That was something the board actually had discussed when we originally started discussing this, so that you're avoiding fall breaks, spring breaks potentially. And then in between meetings are those kind of blue highlights that would be having the board meet every third Monday. What we would like to do with that initially is do that virtually, limit that to your closed session review, those things that you have to get through, so that we can try to accomplish that in a afternoon 2-hour virtual meeting. Now, as we get into this, we may see that doesn't meet the needs of the board, but we are hopeful initially that would be a potential there. We would still, with the yellow meetings, there was regularly scheduled meetings, keeping those as your full board meetings, and hopefully being able to meet in person, having those discussions, getting through all of an open session, and then going into a closed session review, but blue meetings being simply closed session. Did also add a regular scheduled meeting for the last Monday in July, to work through any last minute certification issues, waivers prior to the start of school. It's a lot. We know that it is a lot. We would like to minimize that as much as possible. That's why with those blue meetings, we're hoping to find a time that we could schedule those at the end of the day, so we're not taking a lot of time away from the classroom. We will have increased abilities with substitutes this year because of some of the changes with House Bill 387. So there may be more subs available.
Yeah, I was just grabbing a high schooler. It's fine.
So, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Recent graduate.
You're it.
Yeah.
Recent graduate, right?
Cassie, when we say afternoon/end of the day, did we have like a potential time frame we were thinking for those blue meetings?
Don't forget, some of us are Central
Yeah,
Time.
that's what I was just gonna say.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say
Central
that.
Time does throw a little bit of a kink there, but that's something else we can look at is time zones and talking to the General Assembly about that, daylight savings, all that.
Give me EPSB priority for.
Yeah, we'll work that into next year's legislative priorities. With the meeting that everyone was able to jump on a few weeks ago, that 4:00 seemed to work well. But then we're also going to have to make sure that we have staff available, that we're able to have that. Sorry, Megan and Beth, streamed. And also, I know that people have extracurricular activities and things that you are signed up for as well.
My admin asked this, and I don't know if we're too late into the game for me to mention it, but she inquired if it was ever possible for us to not have Monday meetings, but instead Tuesday meetings or middle of the week, so that we could get our things going for the week, and then and so I said that I would mention it.
That is something I think we can absolutely poll members about too. Is there a day of the week? Like I will say, Chair Mitchell seemed to be very positive for a Tuesday, so maybe that's.
I'm open. I'm. What gets me is the making sure that the closed session. But is Corinne and I the only? Are we the only ones in Central?
And Priscilla.
And Priscilla. Okay, so.
For the moment, I mean, we're making these plans around those here, but.
No, yes. I thought at the moment, where are you going?
Wait a second.
At some point,
We have some vacancies, I guess.
I got you. Okay. But the 4:00 I think could work. 4:00 Eastern would be more beneficial. So I'm not missing class time. And I know that I don't know 4:00 with extracurriculars, but I can at least knowing up ahead of time.
If we're talking 4 to 6, I think that is reasonable. I think that's reasonable that we can coordinate that with our admins. That's just something that we will have to accommodate. I will say from, setting up a math classroom in smaller units, if it is possible to move to a Tuesday or a Wednesday, like I know for my classroom and for my admin support of subs, Mondays and Fridays are tough days. Mondays and Fridays are tough days. So if that is a possibility, that I know that is something that my admin would appreciate, especially with the increased load.
Tuesdays is our staff meeting days. So Tuesdays wouldn't be the best for me. And I'll be getting out at like 4:40 now. So to have a 4:00 meeting is more difficult unless it's been, approves.
And we will, when we finalize the schedule, we will send out the letters that we send every year to your superintendents, copying, the administrator that you would like copied on that as well, stating these are the meeting dates, reminding them that there is the potential for reimbursement for the substitute, and just hoping to get those on the calendars and support you all in those leave requests as well. But what I will do following this meeting is send out just a days of the week to the board too. And if you all can kind of weigh in on what seems to be the least problematic day. And I know that ultimately we're not going to be able to get all 17 members at all 52 meetings that we have each year. And this will be the goal and the calendar, the starting place, but there will be some that we do understand will have to be changed, special called meetings made. If we were to stick with Mondays, and I'll keep this in the meeting schedule regardless, but Mondays, a lot of holidays tend to fall on Mondays. And so we will also put a caveat in there that if a regular board meeting day falls on a state holiday, that it would be, scheduled for the next available business day. Now, again, that can change. But we understand it's going to be hard to accommodate 17 schedules.
Cassie, thinking about that poll you'll send out, I know generally people would be thinking just days of the week, but if we were going to get nitty gritty, like and actually look at a calendar of specific things going on, hypothetically, if we switch from Monday to any different day of the week, do you think on the calendar you just handed us, we would stay in the same week that Monday is highlighted in, or could that potentially change?
It's all subject to change and feedback. We do just need to keep the frequency so that we are making sure that we're not having to dismiss any cases just for failure to meet and review. That's the main concern with this. I think for the most part, when we discussed the schedule last fall in a simpler pre-House Bill 300 time, there was discussions about wanting to, in general, move to that third week just because of the way that some holidays fell and that, in general, looking better for schedules. So that would probably be my recommendation, is to start with looking at that third week for those regular scheduled meetings and then going from there.
So in the past, there's been a time where we couldn't meet quorum, so we didn't meet. So if that were to happen now, would the cases be dismissed if we didn't meet within the timeline?
Potentially, yes. If the board is not able to meet and review a case when it has hit that final 30, I know Brianna talked 30 to, there were a lot of different timeframes that were put into play there. And this will be rolling because complaints will be received on all different days. They're not all going to be received on the first of the month. They're going to come in at different times. But if there is 30 or more days between a board meeting, yes, it is very likely that there will be cases that will have to be dismissed solely for failure to meet and review.
Because there will also be times when we don't even have a full board appointed and confirmed by the Senate, so.
We are, yes, we have had that happen in the past. It has been a while since we have faced that scenario. But unfortunately, we did have a year where we had a lot of appointments that were made under the reorgs. We had one reorg that expanded the board considerably. The General Assembly disagreed with the positions that were added, and so they did not confirm those individuals. Actually, those individuals were told about that from the General Assembly before they adjourned. And so the way that happens is that means they are automatically off the board. And so once the General Assembly adjourned, they were off the board, and we did not have quorum and did not have new appointments, and that's a lot. So we are hopeful that we don't see that scenario again. Now that we are not operating under executive orders, this is a codified makeup of the board, and we do see rolling appointments and reappointments that have to be confirmed every session. But that's hopefully an outlier, but something that we could potentially have to address.
Cassie, I don't know how many of you all go to a local board meeting, but I see on here 4 that my board, Nelson County Board, meets on the second Tuesday of each month. Just putting it out there. Like I said, I don't know how many teachers go to their board meetings, but I'm there.
So again, we'll send those dates out and see, just if there's a general consensus that everybody comes to with a certain day of the week that tends to not be a staff meeting, not be a board meeting day, maybe that will work better and we can look at that. This is just for information right now to get you thinking, and when we bring back the procedures, the regulations, this will also come for action as well with that additional feedback.
As part of that survey, could you also, those 2-hour anticipated times, after you kind of check with staff and see what you all can accommodate, can we get some feedback on possible times for those as well? Because like I hear Diane say, we have board meetings, but if we're planning to meet 3 to 5 Eastern time and your board meeting's at 6, that could still work. But just, and I know for Central that impacts, but if we could kind of get, just so that in our minds, we know and can provide you feedback what works best for all of us.
Be great.
Ours makes it.
And with hope, I mean, I'm hopeful, right, with meeting so frequently that we won't see as many cases every single time we meet, since they'll be spread out. So hopefully maybe we say 2 hours, but there
Could be less.
Could be less.
And,
Trying
that
to
will
be
depend,
optimistic,
the number of the cases that you receive. And see, that's what I was saying. You're very positive for a Tuesday. This may not be, Mondays may not be as positive. So, but we will.
All right. Tuesday it is.
Apparently, you're kind of a monster on Monday.
I know.
Those were Dr. Murphy's words. Absolutely.
Monster Mondays it is.
But we, those are always going to depend on the number of cases that you see, the number of complaints that come in at a given time. Hopefully meeting more frequently means that there's less cases on each docket. But if you get a time frame where you get a lot more reports or more complicated fact patterns, that will always impact that time frame. So that's why we're kind of starting with an estimate of a 2-hour.
Any other discussion or questions? All right. We're moving on to action items now. These items are presented to the board for action and will require a motion and a vote. We will start with action item A, presented by Ms. Trueblood.
So action item A is similar to a regulation that you just approved at the May 14th meeting. That was the regulation 16 KAR 9030 that dealt with the college faculty route and making those adjustments to that route based upon the language in Senate Bill 265. Senate Bill 265, Todd and Sharon shared a good portion of that around the mentoring, but there's also a piece of that bill that touches specifically on the alternative routes. And one thing that it did to multiple routes was it removed the requirement of an offer of employment before issuance of the initial certificate, but then added in the requirement that the candidate complete a year of teaching experience and have a recommendation from the district before issuance of the certificate. So on May 14th, you made those updates to the college faculty route, and then we have used that similar language to make those updates to 16 KAR 9010, which is the option 1 exceptional work experience route. So this staff note is on page 158 of your agenda book, and then the regulation starts on page 160 with the statement of emergency and 161 with the full regulation. Again, we would ask that the board approve both the emergency and ordinary administrative regulation because Senate Bill 265 did contain that emergency clause and is in effect. So you need the emergency regulation to go in effect immediately, and then the ordinary would mirror that and be the permanent regulation that would go into effect. So are there any questions with this? And just as a refresher for what we did with the college faculty route as well was created a provisional certificate where when the candidate meets, so in this case, when they meet the exceptional work experience requirements that are in statute, they would be issued an initial provisional certificate for 2 years that would allow them time to obtain that 1 year of teaching experience and recommendation and then reapply for the full professional certificate.
Are there any questions? At this time, I will need a motion.
I make the motion to approve the emergency and ordinary amendment to 16 KAR 9010.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Thank you, Ms. Snell. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 9010 Professional Certificate for Educational or Exceptional Work Experience Amendment. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next, we have action item B.
Okay, action item B is 16 KAR 9080, which is titled the University-Based Alternative Certification Program. Really is you're going to be your option 6 regulation. This regulation you updated last session as well as part of legislation, and it did not escape this session either, so it needs additional updates. These are also based on Senate Bill 265's changes to the alternative routes. With this one, though, it was a little bit different the way that they worded things. They did still leave in there that the individual is going to be enrolled in a program and employed concurrently. So we did not make changes to that portion. What is changed in here, and again, this regulation is going to start on page 166, again with the statement of emergency. But then as we get into page 168 is where the changes start, where we are striking out references to the Kentucky Teacher Internship Program, since that was removed from KRS 161030. We further remove a reference on what's page 71 or page 5 of the regulation. And then on page 172 of the regulation, we are adding in that when they are applying for the full professional certificate, they have to have the recommendation from the employing school district, as that was added to the language in KRS 161048. We did not make any changes to the second half of the regulation, which deals with the alternative administrator programs. So again, with this one, we would ask that you again approve an emergency and ordinary, with the two versions being identical.
Are there any questions? At this time, I'll need a motion.
Make a motion to approve the emergency and ordinary amendment to 16 KR 9080.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dean Murphy. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 9080 University-Based Alternative Certification Program Amendment. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay, and the motion passes. Next is action item C.
Action item C is an amendment to 16 KAR 9100, which was also amended last session as well when they extended the renewal periods for the temporary provisionals. This is the option 7 route to certification, the institute route. And the changes in Senate Bill 265 to this route were more substantial than the others. Senate Bill 265 actually started out as only amending option 7, and then picked up additional bills along the way. But with this change to option 7, what the bill does is, from statute, it removes the requirement that the candidate have the offer of employment. It removes the requirement that they take an admissions assessment, which the board did remove that requirement for your other graduate level programs. When you made that change, you could not make that change to option 7 because it was required in statute. It moves the requirement that they complete the praxis exams for certification to the end of the program instead of prior to issuance, and also removes the ability for you to require a completion of half of the institute hours prior to issuance of the temporary provisional certificate. It allows for the temporary provisional certificate to now be issued upon enrollment in an approved institute, along with meeting the requirements for the degree and the GPA. So with this, the staff notes page 177, the reg starts on page 179. It is again an emergency, and so it does have the emergency and ordinary versions. The changes that have been made to the regulation, as well as to the guidelines for an option 7 program, the submission writer. are necessitated by Senate Bill 265. It's removing any reference to those admissions requirements that have now been removed from statute, allowing for issuance of the temporary provisional upon enrollment of the institute. But then I also made an update to the guidelines based on some discussion that the board had previously in reviewing an option 7 provider. And the guidelines start on page 188 of your agenda book. And so I believe this portion is going to be on page 190 potentially. It's towards the end of the guidelines, and it's on that page, letter G, where it says establish effective educational partnerships, and added in the language within the state. Because that was something that the board really discussed about making sure that those partnerships were within the state. Are there any questions about this regulation?
Any questions? All right, at this time, I will need a motion.
I make the motion to approve 16 KR 9100.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Dr. Lingo. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 9100, alternative route to Certification Institute amendment. Is there any discussion?
And that includes the emergency and ordinary.
Yes. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next is action item D.
Okay, the last of the regulations that I have for you today, and I'm very sorry, is a repeal regulation. So any regulation that is on the books, to remove that, the board does have to file a repealer of that regulation. As you can see, the repeal on page 192, it's very straightforward. It is just one section stating that we are repealing 16 KAR 7010, which is the Kentucky Teacher Internship Program regulation. While the program has not been operational since 2018, because it remained in statute, it remains on the books. However, with its removal from 161030 by Senate Bill 265, the board will now need to repeal the regulation to make way for the new guidance with the new mentor program that will be released. Are there any questions with this?
Any questions or discussion?
I'm just glad it's not Monday.
All right. Well, at this time, we'll need a motion.
I make the motion, sadly, as much as I love K-TIP, to approve the repeal of 16 KAR 7010.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Is there a
I'll
second? Thank you, Mr. Fryer. The motion before the board is to repeal 16 KAR 7010. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. I really want to, but I won't. The motion passes. Next, we have action item E, presented by Tom.
Action item E is a request to waive a portion of 16 KAR 4090. If you remember, we, as a board, made a decision last year to offer this conditional waiver for individuals who did not meet the requirements for the one-time exception renewal. And so ultimately, for the one-time exception, the requirement is at least a rank 2 or higher, along with 3 years of experience and in good standing when their certificate expired. And so would allow the individuals this waiver to renew based on with a little twist compared to last year. Last year it was an offer of an employment. As Cassie mentioned earlier, we have to remove that language, but it is still held on or requires the district to make a recommendation for the hire and renewal of the individual. So they are recommending for that certification. So again, it would allow anyone with a rank 3 and in good standing at the time of expiration and still in good standing with character and fitness to renew. We had positive feedback from districts last year, and I've had multiple inquiries moving forward for hiring for next year. So as the year started to expire, so.
Any questions or discussion? All right, at this time, I'll need a motion.
You go ahead.
I make a motion.
Thank you, Ms. Keller. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 4090, request to waive reissuance requirements for candidates with a recommendation from a Kentucky school district. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. And last, we have action item F, presented by Sharon.
So this one is an Option 7 Institute proposal, and this was from Ohio Valley Educational Cooperative, or what we call OVEC. And they are in partner with the University of Louisville. And this program is to provide job-embedded training paired with non-traditional coursework to prepare aspiring educators for certification in their desired content area. The proposal submitted by OVEC is an institution that spans 18 months from admissions to completion, and the certification areas are listed. I'm not going to go through and read all of those. We're going to try to keep this short and sweet. They have 3 continuous assessment plan transition points for monitoring candidates, and those are what they call cards 1, 2, and 3. And it is the continuous assessment records and documentation system. So the assessment system in the college collects and analyzes data on applicants' qualifications, candidates' undergraduate and graduate performance, and unit operations to evaluate and improve the unit and its programs. Their proposal is included in the board meeting materials and requires approval by EPSB before it may be offered for certification.
Any questions or discussion? This time I'll need a motion.
I make the motion to approve OVEC's Option 7 program.
Thank you, Mr. Fryer. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis. Motion before the board is to approve Option 7 Institute proposal from the Ohio Valley Education Cooperative. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? I'm so sorry.
I just need to abstain.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Any other discussion, comments? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. The board is now ready to review waiver request KRS 1610281N provides that the board has the authority to waive its administrative regulations when a request is submitted by an applicant for certification, a post-secondary institution, or a superintendent of a local school district. When requesting a waiver, the requesting party must submit to the board a written request along with appropriate justification for the waiver. EPSB staff reviewed the waivers with the EPSB's waiver committee during open meeting immediately prior to this meeting, and the waiver committee formulated recommendations. Brandon Harrod and Sharon Salzman will present the waiver request to the full board, and the waiver committee member Corinne Murphy will present the committee's recommendation for final action, starting with waiver A.
All right, this is an occupation-based career and technical education waiver, and they've submitted it on behalf of Bruce Allen. He is certified to teach business and currently holds a professional rank 2 business and marketing certificate, as well as a 1-year provisional certificate for teaching occupation-based aviation. He holds current professional licenses as a Federal Aviation Administration, ground instructor, and pilot. OCTE believes these licenses, along with his master's degree in education, exceed the requirements of an associate degree in the content area of aviation. They are requesting that the EPSB waive the requirement of an associate degree in the occupation-based content area for Mr. Allen and issue the 5-year professional certificate for teaching occupation-based aviation.
Thank you. And Dr. Murphy, the recommendation?
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver requests and supporting documentation submitted by the Office of Career and Technical Education. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. At this time, I will need a motion.
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 2020, request to waive occupation-based career and technical education degree requirements for Bruce Allen. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next, we have waiver B.
This is another Office of Career and Technical Education renewal requirement. They are requesting to allow for an additional one-year professional certificate renewal due to a candidate's extenuating circumstances. The candidate was diagnosed with cancer, and then his daughter was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. This waiver will allow him to complete his degree and go to the 5-year professional certification when he renews in 2025. The candidate is enrolled in BCTC and working towards his associate degree. Once his credits for prior learning are applied, he'll need 15 hours, and OCT is requesting that the EPSB waive the renewal requirement for the candidate and issue the 1-year provisional certificate.
Thank you. And Dr. Murphy?
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request submitted by the Office of Career and Technical Education. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. This time I will need a motion.
Make a motion to approve the waiver.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Dr. Lingo, I think. Was that?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 2020, request to waive occupation-based career and technical education renewal requirement for a candidate. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Next, we have waiver C.
All right, this is to waiver for emergency certificate requirements for Garrett County. They have been unsuccessful in finding qualified teachers for one of its 2 Spanish positions for 5 years. The district and school has posted the position multiple times in the last 12 months and attended multiple job fairs. The school has had 0 applicants. The current emergency certified teacher has attempted to pass the praxis but has been unsuccessful due to test anxiety. Without offering Spanish, students will not be able to fulfill their college requirements, so the district is requesting that the EPSB waive the number of years an emergency certificate can be offered and issue a 3rd emergency certificate for this candidate.
Dr. Murphy?
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request submitted by the Girard County Schools. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
All right, thank you. At this time, I'll need a motion.
Make the motion to approve the waiver.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Is there a second?
Second. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Keller. I think I heard. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 2120, request to waive emergency certificate requirements for Garrett County Schools. Is there any discussion?
I just have a question that maybe our EPPs can help. I thought that the college language was no longer necessarily, or the foreign language was no longer a college requirement.
Depends upon the university.
Okay.
Some universities still require it.
Okay.
Good question. Any other question or discussion?
And at the committee, the reason for this one and the next one, we said, okay, was because it's just a 1 year. They would have to apply for another waiver at a later time, so. Since it's just for 1 year.
Any other questions or comments or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next, we have waiver D.
This one is similar to the last one. This one's for Owen County Schools, and they've been unsuccessful in finding qualified teachers for a Spanish position. The school went 6 years without a certified teacher because they had 0 applicants. The district said their only course of action was to offer the course through an online platform, but the platform did not allow for conversational aspect of the curriculum. The candidate is in a program out of state that does not qualify them for an option 6 program. The candidate is also a native Spanish speaker. The district is requesting that the EPSB waive the number of years an emergency certificate can be offered and issue a 3rd emergency certificate for this candidate.
Thank you. Dr. Murphy?
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by the Owen County Schools. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver and therefore recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. At this time, I'll need a motion.
I make the motion to approve waiver.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Reber. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 2120, request to waive emergency certificate requirements for Owen County Schools. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next is waiver E.
So this is to waive reissuance requirements for a professional certificate for Madeline Blue. And this is for her professional certificate for elementary education, which expired in 2020. In lieu of the 6 graduate hours, Ms. Blue notes that she has been teaching in a private school for 19 years. In 2023, she took a 50-hour class, The Science of Reading, Orton Gillingham course, and she is requesting that the EPSB waive the required coursework and issue her professional certificate for elementary education.
Thank you. Dr. Murphy?
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by the applicant. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. At this time, I'll need a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Dr. Ellis. Thank you, Ms. Snell. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 4090, request to waive reissuance requirements for professional certificate for Madeline Blue. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Next, we have waiver F.
This is similar to the last one, and this one's for Tiffany Coverdale. She held a professional certificate for teaching music, all grades. That certificate expired in 2006, and she has submitted this waiver to request a reissuance of her professional certificate. She has been teaching in a private school for 19 years, but has a total of 22 years of teaching experience. She is requesting that the EPSB waive the required coursework and reissue her professional certificate for music education.
Thank you. Dr. Murphy?
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by the applicant. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. At this time, I'll need a motion.
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 4090, request to waive reissuance requirements for professional certificate for Tiffany Coverdale. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes. Next is waiver G.
This one is to waive the 10-year recency requirement for praxis for Angel Hamilton. She took the middle school English language arts praxis 2 in February of 2014. She then decided to take time off to stay home to take care of her children. Her husband traveled frequently, and so she felt like it was best for her to be the primary caregiver for the children. She is asking the EPSB to allow her previous English language arts praxis 2 score to qualify for issuance of the certificate, though it is more than 10 years old.
Thank you. Dr. Murphy?
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request submitted by the applicant. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I make the motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 6010, request to waive 10-year recency requirement for praxis for Angel Hamilton. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes. Next, we have waiver H.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. Thank you to the board. So this one is for 16 KR 5040. It's a request from Transylvania University to waive a portion of student teaching days. While attempting the completion of the 70 required student teaching days, a Transylvania University student encountered some medical emergency. They had to receive diagnosis and some health conditions and treatment that made them absent for 5 of those student teaching days. In your documentation, you'll see a note that was sent from the doctor. You also see supporting letters from the Transylvania University, from the cooperating teacher and from the university supervisor, all about the exceptional performance of the student. The cooperating teacher said, based on her outstanding performance and dedication to the teaching profession, I have no doubt that she will continue to make significant contributions to the field of education. Also note that in the support letter from Transylvania University, they highlighted that she received the prestigious Transylvania University Education Award for her outstanding scholarship, service, and classroom teaching. So they have requested that 5 of her days be waived.
Thank you. Dr. Murphy?
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by Transylvania University. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. This time I'll need a motion.
Make a motion.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fryer. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 5040, request to waive student teacher days due to medical emergency for Transylvania University. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay, and the motion passes. Thank you all. We have 3 alternative route to certification applications. These applicants are pursuing the option 1 exceptional work experience route to certification. This is one of the alternative routes established by the legislature in KRS 161048. An applicant with exceptional work experience must have a bachelor's or graduate degree meeting minimum GPA requirements and an academic major or a passing score on the academic content assessment in the area in which certification is being sought. The board will need to determine if the applicant's work experience constitutes exceptional work experience. The applications are presented by Todd Davis.
So action item A is Hazard Independent Schools has submitted an application and portfolio for Ms. Casey Combs in the area of school media librarian, all grades. All materials and letters of support are included in your board materials. Ms. Combs has over 5 years of experience as a law librarian. She's responsible for managing all library operations, conducting in-depth research across a wide range of focuses, including practice-specific areas of law, business, public records, legislative, medical, and media. She also manages and organizes the library registry and board materials while carrying out the other responsibilities and duties of the librarian. The applicant holds a bachelor's degree and meets the GPA requirements, as well as a passing praxis score in the content assessment. Has an independent offered the applicant a position as a school librarian. Therefore, EPSB needs to determine if the work experience meets the requirements.
Thank you. This time I will need a motion.
Make a motion to approve the waiver.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. The motion before the board is to approve Casey Combs, school media librarian for all grades. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next, we have application B.
Application B is Boone County Public Schools submitted application and portfolio for Mr. Timothy Hall, requesting the board approve a certification for business and marketing education grades 5 through 12. Again, all materials and letters of support are included in your board materials. Mr. Hall has over 10 years of experience in the field of business. He currently serves as the director and interim COO at Still I Rise organization located in Rome. They support African refugees and vulnerable children. Sorry. In Africa as well. He managed remote team operations and fundraising for the organization. As a project management director, he was responsible for daily operations, budgets, data analysis, marketing, and sales. Additionally, he managed individual and business financial portfolios and served as the vice president of operations and manufacturing organization. He has certifications in operations and finance. The applicant meets the minimum GPA requirements in the academic area, bachelor's degree as well. Therefore, Boone County is requesting the approval.
Rome, Italy, or Rome, Kentucky?
Rome, Italy.
Okay. All right. I was interested. That was interesting. All right. At this time, I'll need a motion.
I make the motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. The motion before the board is to approve Timothy Hall for business and marketing education's grades 5 through 12. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay, and the motion passes. Next is application C.
Application C is Grant County Schools submitted an application and portfolio for Miss Julia Manning, also in school media library, all grades. All materials are included in your board materials. Ms. Manning has over 10 years of experience as a librarian and holds certification through the Commonwealth of Kentucky State Board of Certification for Librarians. As a children's librarian in the county public library, she was responsible for reading times with a focus on literacy skills and community building. She also managed in-person and online literacy outreach programs for the community. She currently serves as the librarian under emergency certification for Sherman Elementary School. And she fully operates and manages that elementary library. Applicant meets the minimum GPA requirements and has the bachelor's degree in the or master's degree in the academic area. And therefore, Grant County is requesting that EPSB grant the certification for school media library.
Thank you. At this time, I'll need a motion.
I make a motion to approve the application.
Thank you, Mr. Fryer. And the second was Ms. Snell. Thank you. Motion before the board is to approve Julia Manning for school media librarian in all grades. Is there any discussion? Great.
I need to abstain. But
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Thank you so much, Todd. I will now open the floor to any board member for board comments. Does anyone have anything they wish to share? Yes, Dr. Murphy.
I just want to congratulate the tech team because it seems like the jungle of tech has been managed, and I'm sure that took a lot of time. So
I thought the same thing this morning. So agreed.
no trip hazards anymore. It's good.
Brianna's not in the room, so I won't get too sappy, and I know you already said nice words, Chair Mitchell, that don't need to be expanded that much, of course, but I do just want to say on the record, in my short year and a half here with the board, Brianna and her entire team under her leadership has just been so fervent in protecting our profession, following board direction, sometimes bucking precedent when we as a board see that we need to be tighter on some things, and we will just dearly, dearly, dearly miss her leadership, but we're excited about the team that she's led through the years and them now taking us to the next chapter. So a huge thanks to Brianna, and we'll miss her dearly.
Yeah. And has even set up the team for to continue on. So
Mhm.
not just left us, but left us well prepared to continue on. So thank her for that. Any other comments from the board? All right. Well, at this time, I believe we are ready to go into closed session pursuant to KRS 618101C and J to conduct a witness review and to review potential actions relating to complaints and reports. The board will also review pending litigation. At this time, I'll need a motion to go into closed session.
Make a motion to go in closed session.
Thank you, Vice Chair Snell. I keep forgetting to say, I'm so sorry, Vice Chair Snell. And do I have a second?
I second.
Ms. Mayfield, thank you. The motion before the board is to go into closed session. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And we are ready to move into closed session. All right. At this time, I will need a motion to go into open session.
Make a motion to go into open session.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Fryer. Thank you, Vice Chair Snell. The motion before the board is to go back into open session. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And we are back in open session. At this time, we will vote on those items discussed during closed session. I will report those out from the board. Under character and fitness, 1 through 9 approve, 10 approve with conditions, 11 and 12 approve, 13, 14 deny. Emergency substitute character and fitness, 1 through 6 approve. For agreed orders, 1 through 21 accept. For findings of fact, conclusions of law, recommended order, and appeal rights, number 1, we accept on findings of fact, accept on conclusions of law, accept on recommended orders. For motion to reconsider, number 1, deny, number 2, defer, number 3, defer. For educator cases, number 1, attorney review, number 2, defer for training, de-escalation training, number 3 and 4, attorney review. Number 5, dismiss without prejudice. 6 through 11, attorney review. 12, dismiss with prejudice. 13, through 31, attorney review. 32, dismiss with prejudice. 33, attorney review. 34, dismiss without prejudice. 35 through 46, attorney review. 47, dismiss without prejudice. 48 and 49, attorney review. 50, dismiss without prejudice. 51 and 52, attorney review. 53, dismiss without prejudice. 54, dismiss with prejudice. 55, admonish. 56 through 64, attorney review. 65, admonish. 66 through 68, attorney review. 69, dismiss with prejudice. 70, attorney review. 71, dismiss with prejudice. 72, defer for training, duty to report training. 73, defer for training, OEA recommended training. 74 through 77, attorney review. 78, dismiss with prejudice. 79 through 81, attorney review. 82, defer for training, state and federal special education law training. 83 through 85, dismiss with prejudice. 86 and 87, admonish. 88 and 89, dismiss with prejudice. 90 and 91, admonish. 92, dismiss with prejudice. 93, admonish. 94, dismiss with prejudice. 95, defer for training, admin code training. 96, defer for training, admin code training. 97, dismiss with prejudice. 98, defer for training, admin code training. 99, dismiss with prejudice. 100, defer for training, admin code training. 101 and 102, dismiss with prejudice. 103 and 104, defer for training, admin code training. 105 and 106, dismiss with prejudice. 107, defer for training, admin code training. 108, no further action. 109 through 113, refer to hearing. 114, dismiss without prejudice. 115 through 121, dismiss with prejudice. 122, admonish. 123, dismiss with prejudice. 124, attorney review. 125 and 126, dismiss with prejudice. 127, admonish. 128 through 133, dismiss with prejudice. At this time, we will go around and, wait, I'm so sorry.
Chair Mitchell, can you clarify 105 and 106 should be defer for training, admin code training?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. My apologies. Thanks for catching that. All right, so 105 and 106, defer for training, admin code training. Thank you. All right, at this time, we'll go around and determine how we'll vote, starting with Vice Chair Snell.
Agreed all.
Recuse on agreed order number 5, otherwise agree on all.
Agree on all.
Agree on all.
Agree on all.
Agree on all, recuse on agreed order number 13.
Agree on all.
Agree on all, recuse on agreed order number 7, and recuse on educator case number 123.
Agree on all, recuse on educator case 123.
And agree on all. So at this time, I will need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Is there a second?
Second.
A lot of it. Thank you, Ms. Pittman. The motion before the board is to adjourn. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And we are now adjourned.